Bonjour, hi, welcome back to another episode of Matthew's Always Wrong. And today is a very serious episode. And why do I say it's serious? Because around a week ago, a parliamentary committee released a 92-page report on foreign interference in the country of Canada. And what this found was that we have people in our government who are committing acts of treason every single day. The 92-page report found that there are members of government at every level of government, including federal, provincial, and municipal, who are being paid off, who are being interfered with by foreign actors, foreign countries, and foreign nationals. What does this mean? It means that foreign countries, and they detailed the countries in the report, China, India, Iran, Russia, Pakistan, and two other redacted countries were the biggest offenders, mostly being China and India. And what they've done is they've infiltrated our government. They've infiltrated national policy. They've infiltrated employment within the government. So it's not only politicians that have been compromised. It's staffers. It's employees who work in general government functions. And it's not only in the government they found interference. It's in our media and in private enterprise. I don't know why this isn't the single biggest news story in Canada. Yeah, it was big, but this is outrageous. When you read the actual report, it is egregious to the level that we're being interfered with. Canada is no longer sovereign. It is no longer an independent country. We're just working for China and India. So it's truly outrageous. And what the parliamentary committee found was that frequent communication with foreign missions to obtain support from community groups or businesses during political campaigns, accepting funds or benefits from foreign missions knowingly and through willing blindness were disguised to conceal their source, providing privileged information to foreign diplomatic officials, knowing it would be used to pressure fellow parliamentarians, and responding to foreign official requests to improperly influence parliamentary business to benefit a foreign state, and sharing confidential government information with foreign intelligence officers. So, all of this to say that we're being infiltrated, and that people in our government are committing treason. And you might go, well, that's just And you might say, well, treason's a really loaded word, right? No, these are literal acts of treason by foreign entities and by people in our government, in our media, and in private businesses. Because in the actual set of laws that we have in Canada, because apparently we have laws, even though nobody respects them, nobody actually cares. I'm kidding. Everyone on the internet's getting flaming me. Oh, you don't know? Shut up, okay? All you internet haters. No, I'm kidding. This is a very serious issue. It is treason when you commit unlawful communications of information to a foreign state in peacetime. Simple as that. So, we have members of parliament, which, by the way, they named in the report, but it's highly redacted. So all the names are there, they're just redacted. And now there's a big debate going on in the government saying, should we release it? Should we not release it? They need to release these members of parliament who have committed treason. A lot of them, here's my prediction of why. A lot of them come from the Liberal Party. There are some from the Conservative Party. There's some from the NDP. So all the parties are definitely all part of this. There's no party that's spared from this, I believe. But it seems interesting that the Liberal Party in particular doesn't want to release these names. Oh, it's a matter of national security that people committing treason doesn't get released to the public, because that could affect election outcomes. And this seems like a recurring theme, especially for the Liberal Party, where, information maybe isn't transmitted properly because of impacts on the election. We saw this with that one guy we spoke about, Huan Dong, in Toronto, who was also mentioned in this parliamentary report, and the extent was crazy. The extent was China, the CCP itself, through the consulate in Canada, essentially forced student visa holders to go vote for the nomination of their preferred candidate, Huang Dong, because they told the student visa holders that their visa would be recalled, they would be pulled out if they didn't do it. So then they were bused to the polling stations and voted for them. That's just one example of clear election, direct election interference. They also said that, because in Canada there are certain places where members of parliament are considered safe seats. So there are certain places where they're conservative strongholds or liberal strongholds where no matter who you put in, they'll probably win. And if you have a foreign entity, which they proved several times this has happened, if you have a foreign entity like China or India, which directly pays for the candidates or pushes people to vote for certain candidates through the nomination, those people will directly get elected, because if you're a liberal in a liberal stronghold, doesn't matter who you are, you'll get voted in and you'll win. And then you have more and more of these people in the higher ups levels of government. And then basically it's just a conduit for foreign countries and foreign state actors to just control our government and control our policies. One example was where you have certain members of parliament through the CCP contributing to them and having power over them, where there was a movement to try and denounce China's genocide of the Uyghur Muslims, right? But then all of a sudden you have a lot of these members of parliaments and you have a lot of pushback and pressure from the CCP to, hey guys, we're not actually committing a genocide. It's not a real genocide against the Uyghurs. And then that just magically went away. There's also other examples where you have the whole India versus Khalistan movement. For those of you who don't know, Khalistan is a small segment in the northern part of India who are trying to claim independence because they're a Sikh majority in a country that's majority Hindu and Muslim. So these people are trying to gain independence, and the Indian government is having a massive crackdown on it. And because Canada has such a massive Sikh population through more mass migration as usual, there have been a lot of clashes between the Indian government and the Palestinian movement in Canada. Yes, we're having people fight for an independence of a certain region of a country thousands and thousands of kilometers away on our own homeland. And this culminated where a supposed high-level up person for the Palestinian movement got shot up in Vancouver. I believe it was Vancouver, or on Canadian soil. People directly linked to the Indian government went up and shot someone who they didn't support on Canadian ground. That's fun, but hunters don't need guns because guns are bad. Only bad people get guns. No good people get guns legally. I don't want to get into a gun debate, but that's just an example. So how do these countries, take control of our politicians and the people in our government? Well, through many different things. Through money payments, where these money payments through, campaign contributions, through supports and gifts from countries. And then what that does is essentially puts the person who received all that money in a state of in debt, they're in debt to the people who fund them. So then they'll push the policy platforms that they want. They'll do essentially whatever they want. And they also work through having Canadian resident proxies. So this is where, you'll have someone who comes from a certain country, from India, from China. They'll become a permanent resident. They'll become they'll become someone who's in Canada. But their allegiances are still to that country. So you could have, diplomats, or you could have, higher level up people in the Indian or Chinese or Pakistani governments or Iranian governments who come to Canada. They get their permanent residencies, and then they run on political platforms, and they become part of Canadian politics. But then they're linked directly to foreign countries. And this is another example of the issue of mass migration, where you have people coming in and not integrating Canadian culture and Canadian society. And what happens? You have foreign countries who are exploiting this system. You have these consultant groups that are trying to bring in as many migrants through, loopholes in the current legislation. No, there was an example. This is kind of off topic, but I just want to mention it. There was an example of this 60-year-old truck driver who just got permanent residency in Canada through one of these consulting firms, who got one of his visas through one of these consulting firms, which literally just works as, there's a loophole in the system. Let's exploit it. Let's get these people working, right? So you got these 60-year-olds, truck drivers, who are coming to Canada on visas and becoming permanent residences. But I thought the whole point was to get young skilled workers. Interesting. There's other examples where with the new caregiver permanent residency rule, you have these consulting firms which are just telling people, look, if you come over and then you just hire your own family as your own caregiver, you can bring in your whole family. And these are just more examples of how they're being exploitive. But the point is, that mass migration without integration is the issue when you have people who are literally, it's not even like a conspiracy theory, people who are literally proxies for foreign governments, for China, for India, who come into Canada and then work for the government, work in these high level up jobs in media and private enterprise, and then they're just working on behalf of the other countries, of these foreign countries. If this isn't treason, I don't know what is. They also work through, political staffers where, let's say you're a member of parliament and you have all your workers around, you have all your political staffers. Who do you think they're going to hire? People who are more sympathetic to the cause, right? People who the certain country likes a little bit better. Then those people will also be able to influence the member of parliament, knowingly or unknowingly. They then start pushing a slightly slanted policy agenda that's maybe a little bit more favorable for China or India. Interesting. Yeah, so this report is absolutely scathing, and the fact that they won't release it just proves again that, there's a lot of them. We've been compromised. And here's a quote directly from the report. There's a significant risk to rights and freedom of Canadians and to the country's sovereignty. That sounds good. This sounds like a minor news story. And by the way, they did find election interference. So this whole parliamentary report came to life after they wanted to do a report on election interference over the past 2 elections. That's all it was. This then uncovered hundreds and hundreds of more things that then led to all this interference reports. So what they found was that during the past 2 elections, which are the only ones they checked, they didn't check the other ones. Over the past 2 elections, they definitely found election interference from foreign entities, foreign actors, and foreign nations. However, they do say that the outcomes of the elections would not have been changed. But this just means that there have been several seats where several members of parliament got voted because of election interference. And by the way, any election interference is too much, right? Any member of parliament whose allegiance is to a foreign country, whose allegiance is to India, to China, is too much. That's not good to have the Canadian government run by China, run by India. And they're very good at this, by the way. The Chinese government is extremely good at, subversion through cybersecurity attacks and through, everything online. They're very good at that. While the Indian government's a lot better at, compromising certain individuals through funding or through certain movements, and then kind of holding power over them that way. But yeah, so what they found also was that, it wasn't just during normal elections, so just you voting for members of parliament. It was through the nomination of certain people who get to go to be voted. So what do I mean by that? Well, in order for you to become a candidate, you have to go to the party, and then the party has its own election to see if you will become the candidate for that certain riding or whatever, right? But these are a lot closed doors, these are a lot smaller, so it's a lot easier to kind of interfere with these. And this goes back to the liberal or conservative stronghold thing, where you win these nominations by having these countries just pay for you, just having these countries push, temporary people to vote for you. And it's very easy for you to get into high levels of government. And again, I want to reiterate, it's not just on the federal level. Federal, provincial, and municipal. You have municipal elections which are being interfered with by foreign countries. Does that not sound like a problem to anyone? The Liberals are now saying that they'll conduct an internal follow-up on the claims. Yeah, great. But so how... Another ways that these members of parliaments are getting, how are they getting compromised? We spoke about the proxies, we spoke about that, but, not only are they getting direct cash and campaign contributions, but they're getting all expensive paid, trips to the countries. They're getting promises of investments in a certain region if they do what they say. And they're even getting promises of employment for certain firms which are very friendly with foreign governments. So this can happen knowingly or unknowingly, and that's something they highlighted in the report, that, some people, they didn't really know that they were kind of committing treason. They didn't really know. And maybe their intentions weren't that bad. Like, they didn't have ill intentions. But what happens when you get, let's say, I'm a member of parliament and I get $100,000 from this group which is very pro-China. Do you think I'm going to start talking about how bad China is, especially when an election will be coming up? Maybe not. Maybe not. And there's many issues of how this is able to happen. One being that it's not actually a crime. You can't go to prison for having a country, interfere with your election or interfere with your campaign or anything like that. It's not actually a crime. The worst that can happen is you get fined. Canada only fines. It's not a criminal charge for interfering in nominations or other political party processes. So, again, let's say you are very China really likes you as a candidate. So, you're running in the liberal, nomination election. And then what happens is China tells the consulate to tell all the foreign temporary workers or all the student visa holders that, hey, we'll revoke your visa if you don't vote for me. They all vote for you. You win. Then you go to a safe, your riding's a safe seat for the liberals. Boom, you win. And now you're just linked with China. You're China's proxy in the government. How fun. And for all those people who say, well, that's not such a big deal. Not only is it a massive national security threat that you have foreign countries pulling the strings in the government, not only to make them more favorable or look better or to, get rid of all criticism against said government, But, you don't think these countries are kind of preying on our downfall a little bit? They're kind of our biggest haters, if you think about it. You don't think China will want to see, because China obviously wants to see the destruction of the West, right? You don't think they won't do that? So China, this poses a national security risk because they're kind of already that cultural Marxism, which is it's a conspiracy theory. No, it's real. That you have these countries that are already interfering in our culture, but then you have them now interfering in our government as well. You don't think they're kind of pulling the strings to kind of, more migration is good. You don't think that maybe some people in Justin Trudeau's cabinet maybe are a little bit compromised? Maybe they're a little... And again, I can make these claims because they won't release the names, so we don't know exactly. And if we don't know, I'm assuming everyone is corrupt. It's very simple. If they don't release the names, everyone's corrupt. Nobody is safe, and the reason that this won't come out is because there are a lot of people from every party who are corrupted, who are, working with these countries. And again, they want to make the argument that, we can't discriminate because some people did it knowingly, some people did it unknowingly, and this will hurt the campaign. Yeah, it should hurt your campaign if you knowingly or unknowingly. By the way, if you unknowingly get compromised by a foreign country, I think you shouldn't win the next election. And if you knowingly did it, you should be, tried for treason. You should be put to prison. It's very simple. In America, when that whole Russia-Trump hoax thing was going on, that Hillary Clinton was spreading, that was a massive news story. They tried to, the election isn't real because Russia, But then the same thing happens in Canada with Russia, with China, with India, with Pakistan, with Iran, and then 2 other redacted countries, which, if I had to guess, Israel and Saudi Arabia, but, I don't know. Because it's redacted, a lot was redacted. That 92-page thing could have been easily 200 pages because there was so much redacted stuff. But yeah, in America, this was a massive news story, and it wasn't even real. It wasn't even real, and that was a huge news story trying to, decertify the election and try to get rid of Trump as a political candidate. But when a literal paper, a 92-page document that outlines directly how, where, and when different political parties, different members of parliament, different people in the government, employees, private enterprises, and the media are all literally compromised by foreign countries. It's like a 2-day news story. Nobody gives a shit. What? Now everyone's going to go, you can't keep blaming all the immigrants on all your issues. Yeah, I can. Because this is directly the point I was trying to make. I was getting all these arguments on in the comments of one of the shorts that we posted, and someone's going, you can't just blame all your issues on the immigrants, blah, blah, blah. Shut up, by the way. I'm better than you. But But no, this is the point I'm making. If you have untethered mass migration and most people won't integrate, this was all the point I'm making. I'm not anti-immigrant. I'm anti-non-integration and destruction of Canada itself as not only an ideal, but also a real country with which has been populated by white Europeans for a very long time. I don't want to see us replaced. I don't want to see the government of Canada being pulled on by China and India, who are puppeteering our elected officials. And this just goes to show you have non-integrating migrants, who then work for, get paid by, everything's paid for by foreign countries. The people who committed the murders of the Palestinian officials, which, by the way, okay, if you're protesting any of this stuff, just leave. I don't care. I don't care about what's going on in India. It's not my problem. Your number one, the number one priority should be what's going on in Canada. And this is very controversial to a lot of people. for some reason. It's not a very controversial statement that I want people coming to this country to believe in this country, to put this country's priorities first above the regional conflict in India. All right, I don't care. There is no significance to Canadian politics. There's no significance to the Canadian economy whatsoever about what goes on with Khalistan in India. You know what is a problem, though? When you have protesters of this certain movement in Canadian territory, and then there are becoming armed conflicts between the two sides, where maybe real Canadians get stuck in the crossfire. People have already died. They're people who got hired by the Indian government to commit an act of murder on Canadian soil because of someone who's protesting a certain thing, which that's fine. That sounds great. Anyways, so they also outlined a few recommendations to what could be done, to fix all of these issues. First one being legislative reform, and it includes making a foreign influence transparency registry. So this is a registry to track foreign influence activities. So if you get money from a foreign government, maybe that should be tracked. Oh, we don't have that? Yeah, great. We live in a third world country now. Changing the criminal code to define foreign interference and to introduce relevant offenses. Yeah, you should maybe go to prison if you commit treason. Modernize the Canadian Security Intelligence Service Act, which would facilitate wider sharing of classified information. Address intelligence and evidence challenges so that it could be more easily prosecutable if you do commit these acts of treason. Reduce vulnerabilities in the political processes. Address gaps in nomination processes and leadership conventions. Yeah, maybe countries shouldn't be able to say who's going to win a certain riding. Oh, and by the way, there was this other thing where, China set up these different spy organizations in the back of deps or the back of convenience stores and, mom and pop grocery stores. They found 11, in fact, of these spy networks, these proxy police states, these police, stations funded and directly owned by the Chinese government. 11 of them, a few in Ontario, a few in Quebec, a few in, I believe, Alberta and British Columbia, where these people would go around looking at and essentially surveilling foreign nationals, people who, they're sympathetic to the CCP, who worked for the CCP, who maybe are there undercover for the CCP. These then got found out and then were subsequently shut down because why is there police stations from foreign countries and for foreign countries in this country? We want to talk about how we're a free and democratic society. Yeah, what happens when the Chinese government's police station in Canada starts arresting people? Don't think that's an issue? Their second thing was engaging political parties, nomination processes, determine whether party nomination processes and leadership conventions should be included in the Canada Elections Act. Yeah, maybe. Maybe it should be. Maybe there should be a little bit of integrity in terms of what candidate gets picked for a certain political party and in their ridings. By this definition, it means that even the Prime Minister, who has to get nominated through their own party, it's not very regulated. So we don't know where Justin Trudeau's getting a lot of his money from. Maybe he's getting a few gifts from the Indian government to allow for more and more immigration. And everyone's saying, oh, that's racist. It is a possibility, is it not? Is it not a possibility that without the popular regulations within political party nominations, that maybe, Justin Trudeau got a few all-expensive paid trips to India, to China, to Iran, to Pakistan. I don't know why he would want to go there, but just saying it's a possibility. Revised statutes governing the conflict of interest and ethics commissioner and the Senate's ethics officer to include foreign interference considerations. Improvement in intelligence distribution and use to ensure that intelligence is disseminated effectively across government departments to, allow them to work together to stop this. Improve systems for tracking and sharing intelligence report and avoid sanitizing intelligence reports to the point where they lose critical information necessary for decision making. Yeah, just like this, maybe that you take off all the redacted so we could see all the members of parliament who are committing treason. No, we can't. That's too much. We can't give away their private interference. All right, so those are the recommendations, but I just want to go over a few more things that, the few key findings, just so you really get a scope of what's been going on, because I've spoken a little bit about it, but there are so many examples, and my jaw was dropping as I was reading this. It's truly outrageous. 1, pervasiveness and threats. Foreign states, particularly China and India, conduct sophisticated and pervasive interference targeting Canada's democratic processes and institution. This interference occurs before, during, and after elections across all level of government and poses a significant threat to national security and integrity of Canada's democracy. The Canadian government was aware by 2018 that its reforms under the Plan to Protect Democracy Act were inadequate to address foreign interference, despite considerable intelligence reporting and policy work. The government has not yet implemented an effective response. And why do you think that might be? Maybe because the people who are owned by foreign governments, maybe they don't want to regulate that. It's just like trying to get members of Congress to regulate insider trading, perhaps, or congressional trading. And it just goes to show that maybe the democratic system isn't as great as we thought it was. It's this beacon democracy, right? But then you got companies, you've got countries that are all just, I don't like this candidate. This candidate, I'll give you a little bit more money. It's not great. And when you try to regulate it, all the members are like, I don't want to, maybe it's not a high priority for the Liberal Party. There are significant differences in how ministers, departments, and agencies perceive the threat and appropriate response threshold. This has led to slow and uncoordinated governmental response. Canada's current legal framework is not equipped to allow the securities and intelligence community or law enforcement to respond effectively to foreign interference. This includes limitations on federal government's ability to share classified intelligence with other governmental and law enforcement bodies. And yet again, big brother government and big bureaucracy can't do anything quickly or right. Very fun, very fun. Although there have been operations to disrupt or deter foreign interference, measuring tangible results and threat reductions remain challenging because they're not reducing. They're probably going up. And the more and more people we keep bringing in who are unchecked and unvetted, they don't have a criminal record, but, these guys work for the Chinese government. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe we should let them into politics. If you are a dual citizen, you shouldn't be allowed to be in any level of government. It's very simple. Because if you are a dual citizen, it means you have direct links and definitely an affiliation with a foreign country. I would go as deep to say if you weren't born here, you shouldn't hold any level of government. It's very simple. Why wouldn't you allow the president of the United States, if you're not born in America, can't be the president? It seems reasonable that only Canadians should be able to run the Canadian government, not people pulling the strings for other countries or other ideologies. We shouldn't have communists in the government, people who were born in China, born in India, coming in and running for members of parliament and becoming a larger and larger share of who runs the government. And then at some point, we'll just be Chinese and Indian proxy states. The government has not effectively engaged with the Canadian public or other orders of government regarding the threat of foreign interference. Efforts to engage parliamentarians have been limited and often reactive, providing information that is too general. The government has limited ability to address vulnerabilities within the administration of political parties, which can be exploited by foreign actors. So great. This is so great. So it's great. It's very, this is a great situation, truly, that we have people just, I love when I can't even run my own country, and then people get mad at me when I start pointing these things out. First, it's like this common knowledge. Nobody can see it because of the culture that's been propagated. Oh, you're just repeating what you saw on TV. None of your facts actually make sense. Mass migration doesn't cause housing prices to go up. The gaslighting that the media is doing to you is, I gotta give them the props. They're good at it. But maybe that it's not good that the population's being gaslit. Because maybe a couple of the media organizations are run by people who don't share our values, who are not Canada first. They've also mentioned that, part of these vulnerabilities is that the briefings to members of parliament, to even the highest levels, the ministers of our government, is not adequate, where the prime minister cannot be briefed, where the prime minister maybe wasn't briefed on certain election interference, on certain, foreign interference accusations and, facts. It's not great that the leader of the country doesn't know that these things are happening, which is why I do have to say that it's, and again, they say it, the report mentions troubling intelligence that some members of parliament were semi-witting or witting participants in foreign interference efforts. Right? So when you get money from, let's say, a state actor, you get money from the government of India, and then you don't report it, you try to hide it, that is direct treason. But if you get money from the government of India and you're like, I could stay biased, which you can't stay biased. You get $100,000 in campaign contributions, you're not going to stay unbiased, right? But the worst of all is that when you start giving, information to these countries, and we saw with a few, I mentioned it with Hang Long and a few of these people, it's like you get classified information regarding policy or regarding whatever it may be, subsidies or for certain companies or, foreign investment or foreign aid. And then you share that information to China, to India, to people, or to Russia even. I think that's what they should have played on. They should have said that Russia was the biggest threat. And then maybe people would start getting interested. But you cannot have, quote, frequent communications with foreign missions to obtain support from community groups or businesses during political campaigns. Because that's another thing. It's these community groups, right? Which are these unregulated, just groups of people who get a lot of money from certain people. It's just like the pro-Palestine movements and at the campuses. They're getting funded by George Soros and whatever it is, right? So you look at all these things, and it's these unregulated groups in an environment where the regulatory framework is non-existent, where the worst that can happen to you is you get a few fines if you're caught committing treason. And the political will isn't there to actually, attack these people. And then on top of that, the government doesn't want to release the names because they're scared it's going to hurt their election chances. Liberals, get over it. You're going to lose. It's going to be over. And it's not only the Liberals. I've been critical of the Liberal Party. I've been critical of the Conservative Party. I don't like either of them because they're, it's heads or tails of the same side of the coin. It's the same, it's the same thing exactly. One likes spending with high taxes. One likes spending with low taxes. It's all the same stuff. Axe the tax. All right, maybe talk about something that's actually important. the NDP is not better, and but truly the only party that seems to have an actual grip on the real issues is the People's Party. And I know a lot of people don't, those guys are conspiracy theorists, they're all blah, blah, blah. Yeah, maybe, they're so radical, which, by the way, the People's Party is not radical. They're just radical in terms of Canadian politics, because the People's Party is as right-wing as the Republican Party, maybe. It might even go further, but it's the Republican Party without the influence of big lobbying groups like AIPAC, because in America what they have is legal foreign interference. You have AIPAC, which is America and Israel together. It's one of the biggest lobbying groups in Congress, and they're getting legal foreign interference. The foreign interference we're doing is illegal. I wouldn't say we're doing. I should say that India, China, Pakistan, Iran, Russia are doing, and 2 other redacted countries. But the fact that, again, it's not only in every level of government, but it's also in the media and in private enterprises, and then these community groups where, if you're elected to the top of a community group, what's regulating you? What's stopping you from doing any of these things? There's no Elections Act or these parliamentary acts and laws to regulate these community groups or these private enterprises. Even if you get, large amounts of money as a company from China, from India, and then you lobby the Canadian government into doing certain things, or you're a media organization that's getting money from these foreign actors, and then you're pushing a certain narrative, it's not good for Canadian sovereignty. It's not good. And again, I really, I don't like to just shit on immigrants all the time. It's not something I want to do. And I'm being cast as this person who just likes, you're blaming all your issues on immigrants. No. I've tried to make this as clear as possible. There's a difference between immigration and mass migration. Though both need to be massively reduced, right? We shouldn't have a mass migration in a time when we have, several crises through our country. A debt crisis, a crisis of lack of housing, and housing prices just massively rising. A crisis where, you have a lack of jobs, but then somehow we need to import more and more people. It's like these low-skilled jobs. We don't need more low-skilled people. I'm sorry. We don't need more low-skilled people, and we don't need people who are just trying to, break the system. People who are just trying to, these consultant groups, which they make bank, and shout out to them, but they make bank finding all the loopholes in the immigration system and just letting everyone in. Because to anyone who doesn't think that, and you must truly be naive to not think that bringing in 500,000 people permanently, plus another, 400,000 people temporarily, which will likely become permanent in the future, by the way. That's another lie they tell you. They're just here for 3 years. No, a lot of them, and that's why they're all protesting. They're all protesting because they were promised on the down low that they'd get permanent residency. If they did all of this, they'd become, permanent residences. But you have to be truly naive to not think that the culture won't change, to not think that there won't be any threats in terms of crime with people with lower IQs, less education, who come from these countries which have very different values than us, which have very different customs. It's not great that we're importing people where, incest is very common, where arranged marriages between cousins and just arranged marriages in general, it's common. And again, it's not, and now they're shitting on the beaches. So you have to be so naive. No, these people are all good for us. Maybe having hundreds of thousands, millions of people who have completely different values, who grew up completely differently, and who have allegiances to foreign countries is not a great thing. And that it's not contributing to at least some of the economic problems that we're having in terms of lower productivity, lower wages, higher housing prices, and a bigger and bigger government deficit in terms of the budget because a lot of them are on welfare. If you're a doctor and you come here and you become a doctor, that's great. I have no problem with that. I don't care where you come from if you're a doctor, But there's a certain level of people. We don't need more Tim Hortons. We don't need more McDonald's workers. We need more doctors. We need more nurses. And we don't need these low-skilled people who are going to be scamming the immigration system. Yeah, I'm a caregiver. Yeah, for your own family, brother. My brother. Buddy. Get it? Right? And then you have these people. It's a scathing report. And it just destroys a lot of these arguments that these libtards are doing, these woke-tards. Oh, stop shitting on the immigrants. They're all good for... No, this literally proves that foreign countries are using immigration as a tactic to subvert our political system, to subvert our cultural identity, and to impose their own ideologies and their own views on a foreign country. We're being literally invaded. Oh, you can't say you're being invaded. Whatever, shut up, okay? The point I'm making is that unbridled mass migration is bad. You can't have it. You need to vet these people. And people who are born in foreign countries should not be able to run for politically elected seats. You should not be able to become a member of parliament if you have dual citizen or if you were born somewhere else. Simple. I'm sorry, did that offend you? What? Yeah, I was born in China. I was a Chinese elected official. Now I'm here. Now I'm running for Canada's values. No, you're running for Chinese values. Oh, maybe the Uyghurs are not being genocided. We should stop saying that. Yeah, I think we're starting to get it now. But this is truly one of the biggest stories, and they need to release the names. This is a horrendous report that came out that just proves that we're being invaded. Sorry, you don't like the term invaded? You don't like the term that I'm targeting immigrants because I haven't heard of any Canadians who were born in Canada, committing these treasons. They're only doing it because they're being paid, right? They're being paid or they're doing it unknowingly. And again, if you're retarded enough to get money from a foreign country and not think that's gonna, it's a conflict of interest, yeah, you should be kicked out too. Knowingly or unknowingly, you know that you're committing treason. Anyways, this should be and should continue to be the biggest news story in Canada for the foreseeable future. They need to release the names. And we need to commit mass legislative reform in order to fix these issues. It should be a crime to commit interference. It should be crimes. You shouldn't just be fined. It's not good that you have foreign countries setting up secret police stations within our country. It's not good. And again, I want to reiterate, significant risk to the rights and freedoms of Canadians and to the country's sovereignty. Think about that. And it poses a significant threat. Last two elections have been interfered with. You don't think the next one will be? And you don't think the interference will continue to rise as more and more people who will not integrate and more people who have allegiances to those countries will continue to not only gain power, maybe get into levels of government, be the heads of community groups, start working in, media and in private enterprises? You don't think this will get worse if the people in parliament, it should be, look, we won't release the names, but we need sweeping legislative reform. We need massive penalties for anyone who do this. And we need bigger incentives to stop people from, and a better framework to stop people from committing acts of treason. Very simple. Anyways, this is truly damning and truly horrible. And again, this affects all the parties. I'm not just shilling for the Conservative Party. I'm not. In fact, I'm not a big fan of the Conservative Party because, again, you're just flip-flopping the same side. It's like the British, the British governments. You see, they didn't like the Conservatives, so they bring reform. It's the same people. It's the same stuff. They're going to have the same big issues. The Conservatives, they're just targeting 3 key words. Acts, better on crime, which again, it is a step in the right direction, but they'll guaranteed they'll continue the mass migration. Guaranteed they'll continue spending. So, are they better? Yes, they're better, but are they the best? No, because they're not targeting the real issues. Anyone who says that immigration isn't a top 3 issue for the country is just wrong. And yeah, a lot of the problems can be attributed to mass migration, not immigration. Again, not immigration, mass migration. But again, I'm going to get into a bunch of arguments with people online with this, and I actually love it. I actually enjoy being a keyboard warrior online and just arguing with these other, I don't know what they do, these other unemployed people. And I'm very excited to do that. The reason this episode took so long, I wanted to do this at least 5 days ago, but the reason this took so long, as you can probably tell, I'm recovering from a cold. I got a cold in the middle of June. How great for my immune system. Must be the COVID vaccine. No, I'm kidding. But again, sorry for the delay, and I'm hoping to continue to make more content soon. We will be doing a lot more, and I've got big news coming up in the next episode. Very excited. But yeah, I could always be wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.